Looking for a guaranteed way to create content that resonates with your audience? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients and let them choose the topic of the interview. Because if your ideal clients care about the topic, there's a good chance the rest of your audience will care about it too. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm Jonathan Green.
And I'm James Carberry.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. Today we are joined by Brittany Wong. Brittany is the VP of Marketing and Customer Acquisition at Vision Critical. Brittany, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jonathan.
It's great to have you here. It's great to connect with you. We're actually basically on opposite sides of the world as we have this interview, which I think is fascinating. I'm in Orlando, Florida. You're in Sydney, Australia. You know, it's just, I don't know. Sometimes I'm in awe of our ability to connect as easily as we're able to. So again, thank you for carving out some time and being here with us on the show. We're going to be talking about this idea that everyone is a wannabe Silicon Valley marketer and kind of what that means. But before we get into that, I'd love to hear a little about your background and what you and the Vision Critical team are up to these days.
Yeah, so from my background, I was originally from Vancouver, Canada, and I started marketing about 11 years ago in software B2B, and I love the space. I'm obsessed with the space, and for the last 11 years, kind of just worked my way up and found myself in Sydney. In terms of Vision Critical, we are a customer intelligence software platform. So we help brands build customer relationships so they can grow and improve their customer lifetime value.
Fantastic. And so,
yeah.
I mean, you know, like you said, you've been a lifelong marketer, you know, I mean, even in, we were talking a little bit via email and you said that working in Silicon Valley was, you know, is a dream of every young marketer, but you never quite made it to Palo Alto or San Francisco, but that's okay. You know, tell us a little about then this idea of, you know, what it means to be a Silicon Valley marketer and why it's okay if you're not necessarily there.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, it was always a dream to work down there. And I have friends that work down there, and just the innovation and the pace of innovation has always been so appealing to me. But I never really got the opportunity to do it myself. I know getting a green card was tough for me, going from Vancouver to San Francisco or Palo Alto. But yeah, so the whole idea really is that for myself and our team, we've taken on tons of practices from the Valley, but none of us have actually worked there at all, like not even remotely close. But what we found is that the people from the Valley, they tend to share a lot of ideas openly online through books, and it's not even at that level where it's just a high level of thinking. They'll take it all the way down to the granular. We just have to be willing to be open to the ideas, listen for them, and scout them out online.
Mm-hmm. And you've said that, you know, in many cases, I mean, you're able to, the knowledge is out there and you've been able to capitalize on these ideas. You've been able to learn from these tremendous industry leaders and apply those skills to yourself, to your team, and have grown very successfully because of it.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And it first started for us whenever we have issues or problems around things. So I remember as we were building our team at Vision Critical and in Sydney, and so I started here with a team of 1. We're a team of 9 now. But in terms of building that team, I didn't like the processes we had for measuring performance against the team. So it all started with goal setting and measuring. Well, how are people doing it today? And I was like, you know what? How is Google doing it today? So just started searching, how is Google, managing their goal setting, and came onto this whole concept of OKRs, came onto the concept developed by Jeffrey Moore. OKRs is a concept of objectives, key results, and how those top level goals from the business trickle down into every team and every person within the organization. So we started on our team as a little kind of incubator for it, and we're expanding it across the Asia Pacific region now because it's been so successful. I mean, even when we look at Facebook, continuously quarter after quarter over exceeding their commits from a revenue standpoint for the last 13 quarters, they're all running OKRs as well. So it's just this model where we're all pushing a couple steps ahead. That's just one example of taking a practice from Jeffrey Moore that got started by Intel in the 70s, has become massive in the Valley. But again, a lot of marketers outside the Valley aren't using them, aren't taking on these practices.
And can you give us then, I guess, a real world example? I mean, it could even be something specific to Vision Critical.
Of an OKR or of... Yeah. So an example of one, it might be, so the objective would be optimize marketing performance by 20%. And so then the KRs, the key results, would be, well, how are we going to do that? So it's the O is the where do we want to go? And the KR is, well, how do we get there? So the KR could be, drive 30 MQLs, marketing qualified leads, by the end of Q1. And so the whole idea is that for every objective you have the where you're going, the how you're going to do it, and it starts from the very top of the business, and every OKR is validated and trickles down to every person within the business. So it aligns the full organization and the full shift towards one direction. That's
fantastic. And you said, I mean, that when you first came on, this idea was kind of in opposition to, were you saying measuring performance against other employees, or what kind of measuring performance goal setting were you working with originally?
Yeah, and so it was just the practices that we originally had from the HR side. So it was everybody had their individual goals. We'd all put them in a system called Bamboo, and then we would track our progress from 0 to 100%. Which is fine, but there's no alignment in that system or that structure. There's zero. So we could all just build our own goals, but it wouldn't be working towards the same thing. And so if we want to hit target or really exceed target, we all have to be kind of focused and running in the same direction. And with OKRs, it's never what can we do to hit 100%. The whole team is driving to hit 120, 130%. And if everybody is pushing a little bit more, then we might just either hit target or see some really interesting results.
Yeah. And pushing a little bit more and it sounds like pushing in the same direction as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if I even just look at the performance of our team, we've been running OKRs for about 3 quarters. It's fairly new. We're taking it to the whole team now, just because from the marketing side, we've overproduced every single quarter. And so this last quarter that just passed, we're at 204% to target, which is amazing and it's great. But also team momentum is there, right? And everybody's motivated, and we're all doing better than we think we can do.
Well, and so I mean that's almost a perfect segue. You're teeing me up for this. Is that one of the other points we were going to make on today's episode was about this idea of team productivity. Tell us a little about that.
Yeah. So as I was building a team, productivity, you see different levels of productivity on different members of the team. And for me, it was like, okay, we're all working towards the same direction, but how can we get more out of our people in terms of not spending crazy hours at work and working till 9 or 10 o'clock, which some members of our team do, but how can we make the most out of our days? So again, looking into team productivity, I looked at, okay, who is thinking about this and who are the best people to lead it? And I came across this guy named Jeffrey Sutherland who created the book called Scrum. He was one of the original founders of the Agile methodology from the product development standpoint. So him and a bunch of thinkers back in, I want to say the 80s and 90s came up with this concept of Scrum, but it was really originated from lean manufacturing with Toyota car plants. That's where it started. And it was all about, how is it that Toyota, with their lean methodology, how are they manufacturing cars at 2 to 3 times the rate of every other European and American manufacturer? And what they found was instead of taking a car through the production line and at the very end testing for all the errors. And at the end, if you test for all the errors, then you have to take it all the way back to say step 3, step 4. Mm-hmm. Toyota had perfected at every single step. So by doing those iterative fixes, cars would go through the production line so much faster without having to bring back cars with flaws all the way back to whatever stage it needed to be fixed at. So, long story short, Jeffrey Sutherland and his team took that concept, applied it to product development. And so on average, teams that are running Scrum and other methods of Agile are producing 8 times more than an average team. Mm-hmm. 8 times. So this to me was like, oh my God, insane. How can we replicate that in marketing?
Yeah.
So we've taken on Agile practices based off of Jeffrey Sutherland's book Scrum, and then obviously looked at all the other thinkers in this space, Scott Brinker in Hacking Marketing, Roland Smart, who wrote the book Agile Marketing. Again, all great thinkers. Roland Smart's, right in the valley too with that full tech scene. And we just started applying the practices to our team. Yeah. So we're doing about 2.5 times the productivity from when we started, but we're missing the piece in terms of we didn't measure our productivity before, and now we're measuring it. So there is a gap. So we're probably doing closer to 4 times, but it's only 2.5 that's actually measurable.
Right. Well, let's call it 8. I mean, there's no data to back it up, but let's round up. Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about this idea then you have of on predictable revenue.
Yeah, and I think for any demand marketing team in B2B tech, one of our big goals is how can we start to drive predictable revenue for the business? I mean, for our team, marketing is accountable for 30% of sourcing all business revenue in terms of net new demand. And I mean, for our team particularly, our goal is to get to predictable pipeline within the next 6 quarters. That's our BHAG as a team. And so came across, again, looked at who has this right. We're seeing all of these companies in the valley, well, not all of them, I should say, a small amount of them scale up very quickly from 0 to 100 million. And with Vision Critical, we're on that path to growth, and really the business is investing in whatever areas they're seeing massive growth. So we looked at, honestly, I was just looking for the best. Who is talking about this, driving success, and is advocating in the valley for how to do it. And came across Aaron Ross and Jason Lemkin through the book Impossible to the Inevitable. And it's all about how, like, the very specific practices that businesses are taking on from how to grow a business from 0 to 100 million. So a couple key learnings from that was the importance of, if we're looking at the most important teams within SaaS organizations, they're saying that the pipeline team is one of the most important, and the second is customer success. Surprisingly, not sales, which I was like, really? But essentially they say if you have an average sales team, but a killer demand generation pipeline building team, that sales team still has opportunity to do really well. But if your demand engine is broken, but you have the best sales team in the world, they still won't have those meetings and those opportunities to start building.
They can still only do so much with what's coming in.
Exactly. And that really is a shift in thinking for a lot of businesses outside of the Valley. I mean, inside sales teams, they're now one of the fastest growing teams within tech organizations, but they weren't always. And for lots of companies, they're still investing heavily on the sales side. But just even making that flip in thinking, we really need to invest in marketing and inside sales to help build the pipeline, is a shift. And similarly with customer success, oftentimes they're account managers and managing accounts. They have the biggest opportunity to expand the business because the customer trust is already there. So by shifting the focus of the customer success teams to really think about how can we grow the accounts, give them that training, not from a sales perspective per se, but probing into the expansion opportunities and making that a focus and giving them targets and incentives to achieve that is massive. And again, outside the Valley, not typical practices, but within the Valley, the best businesses are doing this.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense. I mean, there can be you read articles and see statistics about how much loss and waste there can be through those lost customers. And so that re-energizing that focus on customer success makes a lot of sense. Not only to, continue to, you've got that trust to maybe expand the offer, but also just to retain that customer.
Absolutely. Customer retention and customer lifetime value is so key these days.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, Brittany, you've obviously done your homework. You're speaking with authority about a lot of different topics here. But do you have any advice that we can give our listeners who are, they're out there and they're thinking to themselves, okay, what's something that I can be doing now or on a daily basis? I'm energized by this content, but what do I do now?
Yeah, so I could give a few pieces of advice just from my personal learning. The first would be to read, or to learn, I should say, to learn often from the leaders in the space, and lots of that innovation is happening within the Valley. But I would say that's not even good enough. Just because we're learning doesn't mean that we're actually applying it to the work that we're doing. So I would take it in 3 steps: learn, apply what you're doing, and actually apply it. And then once we can get to that level, then the next step would be initiate. Then you start having all these ideas that you can then take from your learnings and your application to then drive new programs forward. The second would be around stalk your influencers. If there is somebody great that you want to follow, stalk them and stalk them heavily. Because when you get a sense of what they're talking about, if you read their books, if you're following them on LinkedIn, even without knowing them, you can kind of say, what kind of advice would this person give to me? Because you get to know them at that deeper level. It's really interesting.
Spoken like a great stalker.
Exactly. And the last would be paid mentorships. I actually do have a mentor in the Valley, which I'm not going to name now, but it's a paid mentorship. And they want to help, but their time is so valuable. So do you want to go to that next conference and, ask your boss to attend something, or can you use that training budget for other methods and to get even more value out of it? And I really think paid mentorships has been really great for me.
Yeah. It's an interesting perspective. I mean, so many people wouldn't think anything of spending thousands of dollars to send people to a conference. And, there's lots of people, lots of information out there about, how valuable conferences can be. But when you're talking about this one-on-one paid mentorship, where the value is coming from. You can see it. It would be very tangible value.
Absolutely. And you can learn from the best, right? So.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, Brittany, this has been fantastic. I mean, we're going over time, and I don't care because it's really been tremendous content. But if anyone, we could continue to talk about this, but if any of our listeners are interested in finding out a little bit more about, the people that have influenced you, or even learning a little bit more about, what you have going on with your company at Vision Critical, what's the best way for them to go about reaching out?
Yeah, LinkedIn. Brittany Wong, Sydney, Vision Critical LinkedIn. You can find me pretty easily.
Perfect. And I assume that you encourage our listeners to stalk you heavily if and when they find you on LinkedIn.
I'm always happy to connect with marketers.
Perfect.
I think it's the only way we can learn is from each other. So, absolutely.
Fantastic. Brittany, thanks again so much for your time today. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks so much, Jonathan.
If you've been getting value from this podcast, you can help us reach more people by reviewing the show on iTunes. Here's how you can leave a review in less than a minute. Open your podcast app and tap the search icon in the bottom right corner. Type in B2B Growth, then select our show. Once you're there, tap the Reviews tab and tell us what you think of the show. These reviews help us out a ton.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.